The transfer rules in college football have been reshaped before our very eyes in recent years. We've got a current case at Oklahoma involving TCU and Oklahoma in an in-conference transfer that's caused a bit of a stir. We got Jason Ray on the line from Last Word on College Football to break down the Sooners. Jason, how are we doing today?
Doing good, Mark. Thanks for having me on. I think it's exciting to talk about football here this spring. We didn't have it last spring, so even if it's off the field type of stuff and spring practice and stuff like that, it's really good to be talking about football this time of the year.
So I'll give you my understanding of the situation with Chandler Morris transferring from Oklahoma to TCU. So he's made that transfer. It needs to be cleared by the previous school. Gary Patterson, head coach for TCU, had commented this week after a practice that Morris had not been cleared by Lincoln Riley. Then Lincoln Riley was asked about it and basically said that it's being worked out, but made a claim very definitively that he is not in favor of players transferring within the conference and being immediately eligible. And then he made some fairly vague statements leading to it being worked out.
Yeah, I think this is something that Riley is pretty passionate about. He's very, very close to the vest. A lot of coach speak that you get out of him in terms of his weekly press conferences, but he took an opportunity to speak, sort of at length about this, Mark, on his media availability on Monday this week. And to your point, Mark, I think it was a little bit of a surprise coming in a couple of weeks ago. I think a lot of people thought, it was just a foregone conclusion. Tanner Mordecai's at SMU, looking for that immediate eligibility. And then certainly Chandler Morris did the same thing at TCU. Then Gary Patterson mentioned that. And then Riley was asked about it really at length. And, at the premise, I really agree with his idea here. What he's looking at is it really creates a bad precedent for kids to be able to, really just decide that, this isn't a good fit, move on to a different school within the conference and be able to play immediately. We talked a little bit offline here that, it used to be when a kid would transfer, it was an automatic. They knew that they were going to have to sit out a year. Well, now that there's different circumstances and the NCAA has given a lot of waivers, and it seems to be more the norm. If you're more of an expectation from these kids' perspective that if they go and they transfer from one school to another, they have the expectation, especially this year with all the COVID rules that were in place, that a lot of these kids thought they would be able to transfer without any sort of penalty to play. So, and I think it has been something that Riley has taken a lot of flack in the national media over, just letting this kid play and releasing him. So look, I mean, not to say anything bad about Chandler Morris. He's a 4-star kid. He was a really good dual threat quarterback out of high school. Really, it probably has an opportunity to compete for that job with Max Duggan, next year at TCU, should he be available. But with Oklahoma having Rattler and Chandler and Caleb Williams right now in the forefront in the quarterback room, it's not something that where I feel like Riley's nervous to have this kid come play against him next year. I think it's really just the precedent. He doesn't believe that anybody should be able to leave from one school to another within the conference and be able to play immediately. You think about, like, on the offensive side of the ball, does it create any advantages? Chandler Morris, learning the Sooner playbook and maybe bringing that over to Gary Patterson and that team. Sure, a year is not going to make a whole lot of difference in terms of that, but really just setting that plan in place, that's something that's going to be able to to be done throughout the years without any consequences is something that he doesn't want to see. And like we've talked a little bit about before as well, Mark, that you have some of these kids that have that expectation. It's sort of a millennial type of thought process that if I'm not going to get to play here, then I'm just going to take my ball and go elsewhere and go play here. And it's one situation. If you have a kid that's been on campus for 3-4 years, he's waited his turn, and he's just not quite good enough to play and not there. Maybe you feel a little bit differently, but this was this kid's first year. He was a true freshman this year. Riley tried to integrate him into the offense a little bit, got some playing time in some of these, some of these blowouts later in the year, and scored a touchdown on a third down play against Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game. But I think it's an interesting topic that I'm sure that will keep going, and I think it will probably go above Riley's head. The NCAA will probably make some sort of determination, but I think at this point Riley's staying strong on his stance that he doesn't want to see that happen.
Lincoln Riley made some curious quotes here. So here's my interpretation: is that first off, there are rules in place, so you would think the rules would dictate as to whether how this would proceed, meaning that a player decides to transfer, the player is not eligible to play at the next school within the conference unless the conference and or the school, and I don't know what the pecking order is there, but the conference and or the school give clearance. Well, Lincoln Riley makes the comment here, it's a fluid situation right now. Our plan is just to let this play, not let him play necessarily, let this play, let some of these rules solidify, which seems like a curious statement, that let's let the rules solidify. Aren't the rules the rules? And the rules have been established and they're not changing or being voted on. And we'll be open to watching it and seeing how it unfolds. And so that seemed a bit odd.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I could probably take from that, I mean, to your point, Mark, the rules are the rules. I think the only thing that he may be pointing to there in that quote was really just kind of talking about, the NCAA said earlier in the year that any transfers would be able to be eligible to play immediately because of everything that happened with COVID this year, kind of similar to the seniors coming back. But I think the NCAA's backtracked on that a little bit, and I think they haven't necessarily confirmed that be the case. So if anything, that could be the angle that Riley is going through. And I think probably even reading more between the lines in that comment where he's saying, I'm not going to clear him, but if the NCAA says yes, then I gotta comply at that point.